just once again to say the book is called Mutabaruka, the Verbal Swordsman. We have been reading this book in the book club, the Running African Book Club. The foreword is by Professor Carolyn Cooper. And really, it is a very, very, very good read. So if you've been reading it, published by Ian Randall Publishers, if you've been reading, good. If you've finished it, we can have a conversation about it. But very, very good read. So take up a copy and get your copy and read. All right? But Muta! Yeah, look here, man. Look here. I don't want to say that, you know.
No, what you know. It's late last night I come right up because it's one thing, you know, when you dip on the cruise there.
Yes.
So, I tell Shaman, I come back to because they will ask me if I could do the shoot tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
So I tell her, yeah, I'm going to come back still. But
yes.
Yeah, me hear the interview, man.
Yes, man, me read the book, man. And Sebastian was supposed to be on, but he's in traveling to Uganda.
Africa.
Yes. But, but it's a brilliant book, Muta. I don't know what you think. Well, obviously you must have signed off at it at some point, but I think that it really brought the programs to life, you to life, and it really is. And then because it is also done from an academic perspective, even though it's still easily understood. We can tell you what
I've never said.
Mm-hmm.
We've never said.
Yeah.
All right. So people usually do them kind of book there when the person dead. so when they come to me, I say, in the studio, I say, on the radio, I say, two white people come, you know, do a food program and do a thing on the program there.
Yes.
Them say them professor tell them, man. So when them say them about the book, you know, it's people think about it, you know. Come and Jack is on the house and with people at him and I say, so white people are come again for come to that. But think back on it, most of the book them white people write about artists and things is when them dead. So we didn't have an opportunity now to direct what is in the book.
Yes.
So I say, look at now, me give the permission, if you send the script, come give me. I make me read it first.
Yes.
Man, it's when I'm sending the script, me and Jackie sit down in the house, you know. And I fight the home thing.
line up on line, piece of
and go through the thing. It's about half of the book we take out, you know.
Well, I kind of heard him saying that because the biographical part of it, it seems, because I heard him reference that a few times to say that there were some things that you didn't want in it right away.
Yeah, because I said, sure, you know, so when me and Jackie don't go through it, I said, it comes to about half of the book, I'm send it back again. Me and them go over and I say, why me don't want that? I say, look, I know. What do you mean, why me don't want that? Me don't want that in there.
But Muta, there's another aspect to it, right? Because this is somebody's thesis, right? So before it was a book, it was university students who are doing their master's thesis, and they chose you, and especially your work in the media, as their thesis question.
Yeah.
Right, so it's also part of, so there's that. So I suppose all of what you would have taken out would have been submitted as part of their thesis, right?
Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
and then there's
all of it.
Yeah. Wow.
And furthermore, now, Carolyn, for years, long before them come up in the picture, Carolyn said, why we don't do a book about the philosophy and opinions of Mutabaruka?
But yes,
I actually approached a brethren, and I said, look, I want you to do this thing, I'm not going to pay you to do it. Well, it look like the PA and get him off, so nobody do it. So I don't know. So I say, all right, so Carolyn now, we decide to say Carolyn is the right one now, because you know when white people listen to it, them hear something different what you never say.
Right, yes. Them dancing to the guitar.
Now. Yeah, Carolyn now is the one now who will make sure say, when we say, it's with them right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I never have no doubt about how it will turn out.
And I see that Carolyn was involved. She also wrote the foreword to the book.
Yes,
which is brilliant.
Yes, she's the most
brilliant.
Yes, and she was one of the ones who actually do the program too.
Yes.
When I was not here. But
right.
we can go back to some historical thing. You see, Mr. Young, I hear mention about, you know, the freedom of speech per radio.
Yeah, hold up, because I have a break, and so maybe just take the break and come forward, because you and me know how it go already. Hold on. The freedom of speech.
I'm talking about Mr. Young now. All right. You see, Mr. Young, you see, you and Mr. Young, I'm not to mention Mr. Young first. You see, Mr. Young in the early, I already hear them talk about freedom of speech. Continent was one of the program where them call Mr. Young to take off of the radio. And two, Mr. Young knows it's an independent thing, and him film things. This a young say, look at him, he look and say to me all the while. I'm say on the radio, I'm say, him say, look, you know, I don't care them what I say, you know. As long as you don't put no hole in my pocket.
It is true. I bear witness, so I know it is true. Yes, yes.
As a matter of fact, if you don't control it about it, look at man, and I'm going to say publicly, even white try to take out the program off of the radio.
Well, and we have similar experiences, so I know exactly what you're saying.
I know your program too.
Yes. And
when I hear people talk about freedom of speech, you know, I don't think them know what's going behind this.
And this is what I was trying to say a while ago without saying too much, that the threats that you get as individuals and then the threats that come into the station up to today, you know, to get these programs off air, Cutting Edge, Stepping Razor, and Running African. This is the kind of things that we have to deal with behind the scenes. So that on the one hand, it appears as if you have freedom of speech, but on the other hand, because IRFM is the kind of station that it is, and the independence and the foundation that Mr. Young set, and Chad came and followed that foundation. Debbie follows that foundation as a managing director now, so that there is a kind of an installation for the freedom of speech at IRFM.
Yes, and the next thing about it, you know, is when we started out, and them used to listen to the program, them used to have to hide to listen to it. All over the world.
I remember. Yes, it's true.
Have to hide. And what that now is that those people who could have really do something, them never take it serious because they say this is a barefoot Rasta man on the radio. They just a talk and talk. So nobody now going to take him serious. You understand?
And so they did take you serious to a point. Let me tell you how they took you very...
I will go to that. Yes. I go to that. It's because when they realize that the youth them are listening,
right,
them start to really say, but wait, especially when it comes out to the religious part of the argument there.
Yes.
They must be very frustrated. But it did get out of hand already.
Yeah.
It did go and get out of hand already. Because up to today, you look on them and hear them as boy, I'm out of this, I'm out of that.
Yes.
But me know what them I say because I have people amongst them where we tell you what them say.
Yeah. You know, Muta, the impact on, you know, I was there, so, you know, bearing witness, the impact of a cutting edge on political thought and religious dogma in Jamaica is phenomenal. And that's, I think, we take a whole other book. I think that, you know, there is space for that hasn't really been exorcised, if you will, yet.
Yes.
That impact is phenomenal.
It don't start yet because you say, I think that this book is going to show them now, say, it's not a Jamaican thing we did work with. Right. It's a universal thing right now.
Global,
and anywhere we go, any thousands of people in a show and thing, them bring up the cutting edge. Where we on the boat, where we on the boat, you know, you are surprised to know. Every time I pass somebody, them say, well, I'm cutting edge, well, I'm stepping into that.
Yes.
And I YouTube never see it, you know. I listen them on the street on YouTube, you know.
Yes.
So you must know, say, the weird phenomenal, I'm not to say it myself, is that when the youth them take up the program and put it on cutting edge, every week, like if we do the program on a Wednesday, Thursday, you see what I say on it. If it's Thursday, you see Friday, you see it. That is something where them can't ignore, them can't stop it.
Yeah.
It can't stop.
No,
and
because...
If Mutabaruka get shot round the corner, so now, them
ancestors forbid.
It's a problem. It's a problem.
Yeah.
It's a problem.
Yeah.
So we're not going to stop, and that's how we stay, and it's just relax. And that's why I'm going to say I mean, you know whatever I say it, but I have been working.
So much, what can you tell us about the launch?
I've been working at that for years.
What can you tell us about the launch?
And anytime I do anything, some years, you know, like I say, Shamara, go tell him this, or anyone at Jai, go
which
tell
is
him
far,
this.
and which is far, and hardly ever.
Yeah, so
right.
It's like, calling the people them name is important to me.
Oh, yeah.
Especially you. Especially you. I tell you, Cabo, especially you.
Muta, man, you make me feel away. Look, I mean away good, because thank you for that. You know, Muta, I was so frightened when we muck up my name in the book, because I just did not know. You know, I know, and I was totally shocked. Maybe I said to her, look there. My name in the book.
Yeah, man, because I know where you did go. When you upstairs and me downstairs.
Yeah.
And anytime me do a little thing, and you say, go tell him that, go tell him this, go tell him that. Even me used to make fun at Jai. You know what I mean?
Sure. Oh boy, you know what? I need to. I hope Joy get an invitation to this thing, you know, because me don't know.
I have a number for you.
Me have a number for you.
I must tell everybody waiting at the book. Give them send them something. I tell Shamara.
All right, so I will send you.
Yeah, so I hope I do have the name of the people them and thing, you know.
I'm going to send it so I can forward something to Joy, right?
Yeah, so to reach out and now, that tell you say, Cabo.
Yes.
Do what you do, and if you want a positive, me dead there.
I know.
We don't care.
Yes.
We don't reach the stage where we don't care.
Yeah.
We don't care.
I know.
Do what we feel supposed to do.
Yeah.
So it's just that. It's just that.
I know, and you know, this is something that is not really understood so much in the space that you know, the support that I know that I have. It is sometimes when you take the microphone, you know, and you open your mouth and you say something, and people don't understand that there is some serious support. And like you always say, you'll catch me if I fall.
Oh, I mean, well, he was catching too, you know. And he was catching too.
Yes.
Yeah, but we just want to say, we give thanks and tell the book I go launch. No, you never say it, but the book I go launch.
Tell her.
The book I go launch this week.
All right, okay. So we leave it on. Yeah.
And you is the speaker. You couldn't check nobody else.
Yeah, I'm saying every time I check boy, I say Uncle Mutabaruka. I'm saying only Mutabaruka, sir. But anyway,
I'm a sister in crime, man. You have a sister in crime. Come here, tell you say, it's me not hear no other radio station. I mean not hear no other one. I said things them on the radio where if you know they're not the same thing.
Yeah, what we are saying. Yeah.
Yeah, you have now said the same thing. So, me not hear you say nothing where me not agree with.
Yes.
You understand? And that sounds weird, but it's true.
No, it works both ways.
Yeah, so me just have to give thanks to Debbie again to continue.
Yes.
Because she could have easily say, you know, this and that, but she tell me, say, why I have to come and she pick the toe. Her father used to listen.
And she and listen, and she also has commanded a lot of pressure for our programs. So I think rightfully to say, give thanks for the managing director, Debbie and Dewar, for keeping the programs on air. Them come up away hard the other day, as you know, Muta. Hard. Yeah. But here we are. So
Muta, Shamara with her nervous self. That all when anybody tell her, she must go to me, she get nervous. She say some things that she can't believe to me, I say. You know, because she thinks she will get in that trouble because she should have know what me I said before me say it. And that joke business because me not script my program.
No.
Me not script it. You know, me just say it. You know, so, yeah, man, give thanks.
Yes.
And people them going at the book.
Yeah, please. Which are the book we can get the book? Because obviously I have my copy in hand.
I think after it's there in some bookstore now. When the Nation, I Nation have it.
Right.
And I think it's there where the bookstore.
Is it at Sangsters? It's probably at Sangsters. Well, it's Ian Rand, the publisher, so you know it is in a lot of places.
Yeah, and then after Tuesday now, it's well out there.
All right, okay. Thank you so much, Muta. We talk soon. All right.
This is Mutabaruka. We want to present to you a wholesome kind of level of consciousness right now. So subscribe and tell your friend them. This is Mutabaruka.
All right, so that's another story. I think I do have my brother in line. Chief Richard Currie, good morning. How are you doing?
Pleasant good morning, sister. How are you?
Welcome to the space. I'm well if you two are well.
I'm doing great, madam. Thank you very much.
All right, you get back in line?
No, we're still out of power. But we're managing.
You don't have a right to electricity on this International Human Rights Day?
Well, you know, Kabu, as they say, you have to do for yourself sometimes, and, you know, we've never taken sight of that. So, you know, we're working on all these things to be sure that, you know, we don't over-rely, and where possible we can strike partnerships and agreements. So, you know, we're looking at being, you know, self-sustained at some point.
And as long as the sun is shining, there is solar power. So this is where we have to go. Really do have to put ourselves, and the wind. We really do have to put ourselves in charge of ourselves, because if we depend on them people here for too long, we know it go. But good to have you online. Once again, we're looking to January 6th, which is always a really big event in Akampong, and we always talk about in this space. What are the plans for this year?
Well, yes, thank you. So Maroon Fest 2024, January 6th. You know, every year on this one specific day, we celebrate and highlight the culture and, of course, our chief warrior, Captain Kojo, who fought valiantly along with others for, you know, centuries-long war, which culminated in a treaty of peace and friendship. That treaty, which still stands today, symbolizes many things and stands for many things. And I think we've allowed a lot of the noise to get in between the relevance and pertinence of this document. And I think right now it will become more evident why this is worth looking at and preserving. And we want to highlight that in January 6th, the title, Return to a Compound, Return to Your Roots. And by returning to your roots, we're talking to your essence, nature's man. And there's certain freedoms that are prescribed that we haven't quite comprehended. And we want to use this opportunity to highlight that. But there's also one other major initiative that we want to put to the floor. And that has to do with our traditional medicine, indigenous Caribbean medicine. And what that is, and I think, I would want to really dive into this a little bit with you, Kabu.
Mm-hmm. All right, so before you go into the medicine, let's go back to the treaty quickly, because when the minute you said it, you know that I was going to go back there. And I noticed how you couched it, and I noticed the words that you used. I've had many discussions with you since we've had the last conversation on air, and we also asked you this question on air as to whether or not there is a space, and there needs to be a space created for this conversation, this discussion of the treaty signed by Kojo, what it entails, and how to proceed. So I'm not, at the time you said yes. No, I'm hearing though from what you said just now that there might be a change in your stance. Am I right or wrong?
In what way? Meaning?
In terms of whether or not there needs to be that ongoing, at least that conversation between whether it's academia, activists, those of us who have questions about the treaty, because obviously we know the treaty included a whole lot of things, including that aspect of the treaty that we have challenged in this space from time to time, which is a contentious aspect of returning runaway enslaved Africans who would free themselves. So there is that. Are you saying that there's no longer this need for a discussion on the treaty?
No. There's 100% the need for dialogue, because, as I said, there are so many things that get in between the real substance of the document. It causes us to from a level of and pardon the use of the word, is not being condescending, ignorance of the interpretation of that document and what it meant in that time in the language. Today, when we're able to articulate in a space that allows for this transition of the narrative, it will clearly transcend to the people. Okay, so this is something we've never really looked at, and that's the point I want to get everyone to. So there's one point that I just mentioned, because I really want to talk more about Maroon Fest, but I think we do need to have another conversation on this topic, Kabu. Mm-hmm. But when you look at land rights, and what we see happening right now, the issues that we have accessing beaches, the issues that people have, being pushed off land, all these things. Mm-hmm. This treaty preserved land rights for persons residing on this island. Mm-hmm. So there's no one right now who should be taken or kicked off any part of land that is described as crown land. Mm-hmm. Most of Jamaica did not know that.
So that the point to be made, and obviously we're not going to do this in this program here, but I know that my listeners are going to be up in arms already, and there are many sides to this. The point of contention is that, and the point you're making is that, okay, so there's so many other different elements that's included, different acts or what you call the different points in the treaty, that there's so many clauses that the wholesome discussion of this document needs to take place. I am inviting you again, Chief Currie, for us to have that discussion. And it doesn't have to be a public discussion. My thing has always been over the years that we have to determine what unity is going to look like. And this discussion must be had. But I think it is, as I said when I came to Akampong a few years ago, that I'd come there just to ask all the Maroon chiefs if they were willing to have this discussion on the treaty, and every single one had said yes at that time. And I've asked you since, and you've also said yes. So the thing is to let us have this conversation about the treaty, and especially that clause, and then what needs to be done from there, because there has to be some action for us to get past this impasse that we have. All right. So the other thing. Yes, go ahead.
Let me say this before you move on, Kabu.
The informative information presented in this video is motivational and is positively aimed at inspiring, educating and entertaining the viewers with the cutting edge of critical reasoning. If you enjoy the contents on the Black Radar YouTube channel, please consider subscribing to show your support.
All right, Professor Warner Zips, thank you so much for joining us inside of the Africa Forum this morning.
Yes, good morning. Good to hear you again, Kabu.
Right, I'm right.
Kabu, I guess.
Yes, this is the second time I'm interviewing you in this space, right?
Absolutely. We talked about the Maroons, which in fact later on turned out to have an Austrian connection, the topic that we were talking about, this bank issue.
Yes.
It was connected to the big Wirecard scandal, which was an Austrian who really was involved in it. So that's quite interesting.
Isn't it though? Wow. Welcome back to the space. I'm so happy to have you in the space. What a delightful book. What a book that has gone into the ins and outs and the nooks and the crannies of Mutabaruka's life. You know, I read it and I said, it could easily be called The Philosophies and Opinions of Mutabaruka, you know.
No, it's not big enough for that. I really need to leave that to you, Jamaicans and Africans, to write that.
Yes.
That would be much more voluminous.
Yes.
And it should be done.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's a brilliant book, though, so thank you for this. Mutabaruka, the Verbal Swordsman. You're a co-author with Sebastian.
Yes, and I think from the beginning I need to give the biggest credit to him. Mm-hmm. The book is actually based on his research and his master thesis in anthropology. I was the supervisor, and I guess the biggest bunch of work was actually done by him. Yeah. It was then up to me to sort of, bring it to a publication level.
Yeah. All right. So talk to us about that. He was scheduled to be on today, but I understand he's traveling. So tell us about that background.
He's in Uganda.
Oh.
He's in Uganda with his family. His wife is Ugandan.
Oh, okay.
And he's there with their daughter and since a couple of days.
Yes. And my bad because we pushed this interview back 2 weeks. But
exactly.
All right, so please tell us a little about that part of it, because this is, as you said, Sebastian's master thesis. So he did a thesis on Mutabaruka.
Yes, and particularly on the radio shows. That was really the agenda. Because I think, most people, reggae fans particularly, Area FM listeners, they are aware of the music overseas. Mm-hmm. In Jamaica, of course, everybody's aware of the radio shows. But overseas, some fanatics, I would say, listen to them online. Mm-hmm. But most people are not so much aware what is actually the public intellectual Mutabaruka saying and what is his impact on Jamaican and Caribbean society at large. And that was the intention of this book.
Mm-hmm. And what did the process entail? This must have taken hours and hours and hours of listening back.
Yes, exactly. Sebastian spent probably up to 2 years at least selecting the programs, because it's amazing. Mutabaruka has about 8,000 hours of public appearances on air. I hardly know of any other person globally who really comes to that level.
Yeah,
so it was very difficult for Sebastian to actually select those parts that he thought, in cooperation with me, that would represent some major strains of Mutabaruka's intellectual work.
Mm-hmm. So what were you looking for in particular?
Well, different things from his involvement in history, post-colonial claims, reparations, overall justice, equal rights and justice, particularly to black people. That's the main thing that the book focuses on. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we also talk about his public intellectual work in Jamaica, because that's a man with a lot of influence.
Yes.
From my experiences in Jamaica, spending years actually in some places in the country, like in the countryside, in Maroontown, Shaw Castle, remote places. I would know that my closest friends, Leon Hill and his family and many others, they would listen every week to the programs of Mutabaruka, and that would form the discussions the next day.
Yes.
And so that's really an impact.
Right, very prolific actually, because long before, and I like what you've done, and Sebastian, in terms of how the book is ordered, looking at Word, Sounds and Power, for example, is the first chapter, which looks at the movie days, the rise of Muta as a poet, going back to Marcus Garvey and the Black Power movement in Jamaica, and his experiences from the 12 tribes of Israel to Nyabingi, and so on, and Baba Shanti. And there's just so much there in that first chapter, and then talking about Rastafari as philosophy of liberation, so that you and Sebastian were able to situate Muta in that the development of Jamaica literally outside, long before he entered media, long before he entered radio, that this was his life's work.
Yes. Well, that interview particularly is actually Muta's words.
Yes.
We recorded it on camera some 15 years ago in 2008.
Yes.
That was me and my wife, my then wife, Manuela.
Yes.
And we actually released and published that long reasoning. It was just, I think, the night before he appeared on stage at the Morgan Heritage, the East Fest Festival. And he talked about 2.5 hours on record.
Yes.
And we transcribed it, and then with Muta, we selected those passages that he actually wanted to have released. There were some more biographical, some more personal ones in it.
Yes.
I actually, to be honest, I wanted to get that published, but he would like to leave that to an autobiography later on in his life, and he felt he would like a stronger focus on the radio shows. So that part he kind of left it out, but the reasonings on Rastafari, on Marcus Garvey and so forth, we kept in the book because it actually situates whatever Mutabaruka talks on your radio, on IRFM, in his personal experiences. And we had a long discussion with Muta. He wasn't sure if he wants that biographical part that much. Actually, he didn't want it, to be honest. And it was me who tried to convince him, saying that people in Europe, in America, in Asia, in Africa, they are not so much aware of who you are. So I think they need an idea of what the person Mutabaruka stands for in order to understand what he talks on air.
Yeah, the mystique is good sometimes. So here we have. You say in the book also, obviously, Sebastian's thesis, which you are the supervisor, and then we really want to talk to Sebastian about the work that he put in also another time. But there is on page 50 and 51 where it says that. Okay, let me see. Okay, good. When we proposed to him a book title referring to him as Rastafari, namely the Rastafari Verbal Swordsman, thinking to attract a broader audience interested in Rastafari in general, Muta refused. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, well, he's very careful. He speaks for himself, basically.
Right. Let me interrupt a bit, because you do go on to say that he did not want to make it appear as if he took on the role of an official spokesman.
Exactly.
Yes.
He's very careful with that. Because you see, even before in an edited volume called Rastafari, A Universal Philosophy in the Third Millennium, there was a chapter by Mutabaruka of a speech he gave at the University of Vienna as a keynote speaker for a conference that I organized. And again, I tried to propose to him to have Rastafari something in the title. But he will say no. He doesn't want to be mistaken for speaking for Rasta. And I think that's very important for him, that he stands for himself.
Yes.
And he doesn't want that kind of critique that he is sort of, pushing himself into a position of official spokesman. And that's quite important because, sometimes, as you can see on the internet, there are strong voices of Rastafarians speaking against Muta when he criticizes the Bible and so on.
Yes,
sometimes
and I do understand. And this is why I foregrounded this, because I know that he is seen in many quarters, even here in Jamaica, I mean, majority of Jamaicans see him as that, you know, as a leader within Rastafari, so could easily take on the mantle of a spokesman for Rastafari, but that within himself, he understands the nuances. And that, you know, and this is why I pinpointed this, because I thought, wow, this is so Muta to have said I don't want to
Absolutely.
be. Yeah.
100%. I fully agree.
Yes. Also in the book, and I've read the book, you know, cover to cover, really enjoyed reading it. I found myself laughing too, and I'll talk about that in a minute, because you know, I didn't know that I was in the book in this way, right? Muta saying that, you know, he loved. My office used to be upstairs. And then Muta has always said something. And I didn't expect it to make the book, but it made the book. But anyway, so no, go on.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say he's a person who is really giving credits.
He does.
Whenever he receives something, whenever he receives an input, for instance, from his Empress, from Amber, Empress Amber, he would mention that. Yes. And then many times to us he mentioned, well, you know, what I'm doing on Area FM, Stepping Razor and Cutting Edge, it couldn't be done without the support of others.
Yeah, because this is a book about
others. You come first.
Well, look at that, because I tease him all the while, and I noticed that he in writing in autographing the book to me, in signing the book to me, he says, Cabo Ma'adko, keep strong for Africa. If you fall, I will catch you. Because he has a song, I catch you if you fall. And I've always said to him, I know you'll catch me if I fall. Sometimes literally, you know, we might be hosting a program together. And if the chair rickety or the chair is not, if it's unstable, you know, I said, Muta, I know you'll catch me if I fall. And he always says, I'll catch you if you fall. So.
Absolutely. You see, I guess if you have Muta as an enemy, you must be really worried.
Yeah.
But if you have him as a friend and supporter, you know you have an army standing behind you.
Yeah. It is a brilliant book. As you talk about Muta giving credit, I mean, throughout the book, something that struck me, early in the book, in the acknowledgements, actually, I was so taken aback because I've never seen anything like that. Because, all the presenters, guest presenters and presenters who work at IRFM who have subbed for Muta, when he's traveling out of the country and so on, over time, they're all named in the book. And that was very surprising to me. I'm trying to, because it's pretty early. Yeah.
It says a lot about him because, I mean, he never conceives himself to be just the verbal swordsman. He's just taking that role to enforce and, you know, pick up actually the communal struggle, the collective struggle.
Yeah, and let me just go through. Let me just go through the names because it says past hosts. I didn't even remember some of them, and I was a person who would have asked them to sit in for Muta. Tony Rebel. Well, I obviously remember Tony. Tony Rebel, Kishima Francis, Caroline Cooper, Robert Williams, Miguel Lorne, Jelani Naya, Flo O'Connor, Mitzi Williams, Barbara Blake Hanna, Ibo Cooper, Franklin McKnight, Mark Wignall. I remember those days with Mark Wignall. Digital Chris, Amber Crowell, Louis Moister, and Nakim Samaj. And then it goes into the producers. Some who have left IRFM, Joy Morgan, Samantha Mitu, Tony and Linda, Tracy and Morris, Shamara Preston, Saundra Shaw, Simone Brown Keys, and the technical operators. And I'm saying this because the audience that's listening near and, I mean, globally and otherwise would recognize these names. You know, Wilbert Wisdom, DJ Neil, DJ Brian, Dane Young, DJ Kamar, Shane Clark, Nigel Durant, Nicholas Francis. I mean, these people are people who Muta have acknowledged in the book. This is phenomenal, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think, you know, he's doing the same for reggae, actually. Yeah. He's never leaving out those artists that have been forgotten. And even those artists who never quite made it, you know.
Yes.
And that's very important too. And what you just said, I mean, having such a show and later on 2 shows for more than 30 years, it's amazing. He's a very popular artist as well. So he was traveling a lot to South Africa and many other places.
Yes.
So without those presenters stepping in, the show wouldn't have stood until today.
Yes.
And that's very important.
Yes.
And perhaps at this point, if I may, a quick time out. 3 days ago, a very famous dub poet passed on, Benjamin Zephaniah.
Yes.
I think he's one of the big 5, apart from Muta, Okur Nura, Michael Smith, and
And a good friend, and a good friend to Muta also.
Johnson.
We paid tribute to him. I sat in for Muta on his program on Thursday, and we paid tribute to him in that space, to Benjamin Zephaniah. So thank you for raising it here again. Yeah,
that's what I wanted to say. So, of course, he will do that immediately because that was a very powerful voice.
Yes.
And not just in music, the books he wrote. I just recently read again Refugee. I mean, I can just propose it for you to read. It's such an amazing
it's interesting you should say that, because when I sat in for Muta, I said we could easily call this program, We Could All Be Refugees, in terms of paying tribute to Benjamin Zephaniah. So yes, there's a chapter. There's a chapter in the book. Chapter 4.3, where you talk about crime prevention and proposals for solution, going through Muta's programs, of course. And this is one of the chapters. This is one of the the chapters in the book that I found really illuminating, because it kind of I go back and I said for years, activists and advocates and people like Muta have been raising some of these solutions in the spaces, interviewing all of the actors, and I'm talking about the players who can make a difference. And yet we still see a situation in Jamaica where crime is, instead of us dealing with this and instead of addressing the situation, we see a situation where crime is ballooning out of proportion. So this is a chapter, I think, that is really, really earth-shattering for me. It says, repeatedly, Mutabaruka plays his part in crime prevention campaigns or crime curbing initiatives. In his broadcast, he proposes pertinent ideas to policymakers to tackle the island's crime issues. Nevertheless, he demands from the authorities the same positive attitudes towards a common interest that he sees as his own responsibility. And so I suppose out of that, and I want you to comment on this, that Muta as a poet, Muta as the author, Muta as the radio announcer, the radio presenter, that he has always foregrounded solutions to things like crime and violence on the island.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I really appreciate, or appreciate love with Muta. He's not just talking about Babylon. He's really getting to ground levels, how to improve situations that he finds terrible. And I remember even him going on stage at Rebel Salute and talking about the crime situation and actually saying, who is not afraid if he sees a Toyota Corolla with black-tainted window screens behind him? And people applauded him for it. And I guess it can only be the society at large to solve that situation. I mean, it's nothing that makes life nice in Jamaica.
Yeah. In the book you say, let's contemplate some of the different aspects that Muta talks about to achieve a lower crime rate and establish a safer social environment. He proposes concrete measures in terms of social reform, be it job creation programs or entrepreneurship encouragement. In addition, he supports crime counteraction through restrictions of dangerous weapons or even acquisition of guns in private possession by government. He also speaks out for banning violent movies from TV, or at least rating them as parental guidance suggested. And then you say other suggestions include seeking advice from other countries in formerly crime and violence-affected nations and cities. I want to make a point here, because I remember that for years he tried, through us and the producers here, to get Rudy Giuliani on the program with him. And I think I can't remember if he actually interviewed Rudy Giuliani, but I do remember that I made those calls. And this is on Muta's behalf. He was trying everything to get him to say, how did you manage to curb crime in New York? That was when Rudy Giuliani was Rudy Giuliani, right? How did you manage to curb crime in New York? And how can Jamaica learn from what you have done in New York? So we had made many calls to Giuliani's office, had conversations with them, and were in the process of setting up that interview. But I can't remember if Muta actually did that interview.
I'm not sure. No, I wouldn't be certain. I would rather think no. But you must ask him. But at least those parts where he talked about that kind of experience, those are the parts that Sebastian looked into carefully, transcribed it, and actually put it in the book. And I mean, it's very difficult to curb down crime. It is very difficult. I mean, just telling people not to kill others, if it would have helped, hundreds of thousands of reggae artists have done that in songs on black violence.
Yes.
It didn't really help, because the situation is as such that the alternatives for a lot of youth in those areas, in those garrison areas, in Kingston particularly, but not only in Kingston, don't find any other alternatives. They don't find jobs. Not everybody can be a reggae star. So what can you do then? And once you get involved in some kinds of drug trade and so on, you almost need a weapon. And if the weapons are so much available, which Muta criticizes, that you can easily get it for very, very cheap prices. Then that's what you do. It gives you immediate power, and it gives you immediate access to financial means.
Yeah, it must to move to another point. It must have been for Sebastian and then for yourself as a supervisor a treat to go through those parts of the program and of Muta's radio programs that dealt with, as you call it in chapter 5, the European remnants, Christmas, church, and state. That must have been quite something, isn't it?
Well, actually, we wouldn't have written that book if we were not critical of the European remnants.
Yes.
Actually, that kind of critique motivated me from the very beginning of my career as a student, some 40 plus years ago. You would have to ask people like Leon Hill, with whom I spent many, many months in Maroontown and Shaw Castle in his family. He would certainly recall his conversations from the beginning. So actually that brought me to Jamaica, that brought me to reggae, that brought me to Peter Tosh and then Mutabaruka and so forth. Because actually I'm the same with my country and with my continent, Europe, and my system as Muta is with the Jamaican system. Critical. And I think you need to be that, otherwise you're just not a thinker. And so on that level, we are doing pretty much the same. We are criticizing what we see wrong in our societies. And I mean, basically the situation today between Europe and Africa, it's not very good.
No, not at all.
And that mistake goes back to, of course, to colonialism, but I'm talking now about our lifetime. It goes back to rebuilding equal relationships after colonialism, and that hasn't happened. Not to the degree that we would have wanted it to be. And actually, reggae to me, to a large extent, I mean, is a bridge builder. Even if people talk about fire upon Rome, fire upon this and fire upon that, they come to places like Rome to do that. And they do it in front of Romans. And that's what Muta said in many of his talks at the university and so forth. I have that on record. That's amazing. And it's telling you that those links between people are possible, and actually the book is an example of it.
Yes, it is a brilliant book, and once again I want to congratulate Sebastian. Did he get a distinction for his master's work? Yes, I'm sure.
Yes, of course. Well, I had to grade it. It was a very good thesis. Otherwise it would have been very difficult to make such a book out of it. So he has done a great job. And Muta as well, he usually acknowledges him first and is saying, this professor here has done very little. But anyway, I felt I did a little bit, but the major part of work actually was Sebastian's. But again, the groundwork was Muta's. Because without his talks and his speeches on radio and his interventions, Sebastian couldn't have written that. And, you know, let me say one more thing, perhaps. The way we see it from the outside, that is from Europe or from Austria, Mutabaruka is not just an icon. He's something very, very peculiar for Jamaica. I don't think that someone doing that for 30 years and saying any political ill in such an explicit way, you know, emphasizing any political ill in such an explicit way could remain on air in even Austria, and Austria is fairly liberal.
I was thinking about that this morning, actually. I'm just driving to work because, and I thought the very same thing, you know, that within this discussion of freedom of speech, that IRFM does provide the space, that Muta has been doing this for so long, and at times is even cited when people are saying that, well, there is freedom of speech for for journalists and for media workers and so on. And then I thought again to myself, but sometimes the conversations are a little bit skewed because they don't know how much pressure the presenter comes under, and that you do that, and then you're ostracized and you're not invited to their parties and you're left out. And so I was having that conversation in my head this morning, and then I came right back to where you left it now, which is that in many other countries, though, this program would have been on air. So there is a point to be made there, yes.
Do that in China or in Russia or in the Emirates or in many African countries, in fact. You're not only in jail, you probably don't survive it. And in that sense, I believe Mutabaruka is perhaps the biggest proof of the vitality of democracy in Jamaica that you could ever find.
What a conundrum, because on the other hand, it is the reverse is also true. In terms of the extent to which people like Muta are ostracized by the system because of what you say and because of who you are, So there is still that on the other side.
To be honest with you, long time ago, 30 years ago, when I would listen to Cutting Edge in the car somewhere in Kingston or in the countryside, I was wondering, can he survive for very long? Because he was criticizing those in power, those with economic and executive power. And we know so many people who have been killed in Jamaica. From Peter Tosh to many others. Bob Marley was shot at. I mean, imagine. So I was at the time I was thinking, I'm not sure.
But the threats come in, and I'm sure he'll tell you about those. The threats do come, but the point is well taken that there is that on the one hand, but quietly, there are those threats that come in, and the refusal to engage, because of who you are and because of what you say. So there is also that. So just to balance things a bit. But once again, just to say thank you. Thanks, Sebastian, for the research. Thank you for overseeing this research, for supervising this research, and for publishing this book, Mutabaruka, the Verbal Swordsman. Who's the publisher? Ian Randall Publishers?
Ian Randall Publishers again, I had very good contacts with him, and actually, in the meantime, I believe we are friends. I've met him many times. He published a number of my books, and I know that he's very friendly with Muta too. They've met at conferences. In Vienna and so So I think when we talked to them and said we have a book on Muta, are you interested? Immediately came back a response, yes, 100.
Brilliant. Love that. The book is going to be launched. I'm not at liberty to say much more than that, but that you'll hear more to the listeners once that happens. Once again, Professor, thank you so much for the work that you continue to do. And thank you so much, and Sebastian also. We'll have another discussion with Sebastian to go a little bit deeper into his research and what he found and how we do it, the methodologies, etc., etc., etc. But thank you so much, Prof.
Thank you, and thank you for your brilliant work on IRFM. And of course, thank Mutabaruka for having that trust in us to do that book together with him.
All right.
That's the most important part.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
The informative information presented in this video is motivational and is positively aimed at inspiring, educating and entertaining the viewers with the cutting edge of critical reasoning. If you enjoy the contents on the Black Radar YouTube channel, please consider subscribing to show your support.
This is Mutabaruka. We want to present to you a wholesome kind of level of consciousness right now. So subscribe and tell your friend them. This is Mutabaruka.